When you think of Greenland, you probably picture this, just an endless sheet of ice, right? A huge white desert that feels like it's been frozen solid forever. But what if I told you that entire ice sheet, which is 2 miles thick in some places, is actually hiding a massive secret? A lost world just locked away under all that ice. So let's get right into it, because that's the big question we're tackling today. What if Greenland wasn't always this frozen wasteland? We're going to peel back those layers of ice to uncover a story that completely flips what we thought we knew about this place, and what its past might be telling us about our own future. And believe it or not, our story starts in a really unexpected place. We're not in a modern science lab. Nope. We have to go all the way back to the Cold War, to a top-secret U.S. Army base buried deep inside the Greenland ice sheet. I mean, get this. This wasn't just some little research station. They called it Camp Century, and it was basically a city built inside the ice. We're talking tunnels carved from the ice, homes for almost 200 people, and the whole thing was powered by its own portable nuclear reactor. It was straight out of a sci-fi movie, a hidden city with a very hidden agenda. So while the Army was busy with its own projects, the scientists at Camp Century pulled off something incredible. In 1966, for the very first time, they managed to drill all the way through the ice sheet. That's 1.4 kilometers straight down. And from the very bottom, they pulled up this core sample, a tube of frozen mud and rock from a world nobody had ever seen before. But here's where the story takes a weird turn. This amazing sample, this key to unlocking Greenland's ancient past, it didn't rewrite the history books. Not right away, anyway. Instead, it became a literal time capsule, because it got completely lost for decades. The journey of this ice core is just wild. It was drilled back in '66, got analyzed a little, and then in the early '90s, it was shipped off to a freezer in Copenhagen where, well, it was basically forgotten. It just sat there in a bunch of mislabeled cookie jars, of all things, until 2017. Someone was just doing a routine inventory, and boom, they stumbled upon this priceless scientific treasure completely by accident. So when scientists finally got their hands on this thing and started to thaw it out, they weren't just finding boring old sand and pebbles. As one scientist, Andrew Christ, put it, his reaction was pretty much just, holy schist. And for good reason. They were looking at something that, by all accounts, should not have been there. Because floating around in the water were all these tiny black specks. And when they put them under a microscope, they were looking at perfectly preserved fossil twigs, little leaf tips, even stems from mosses. This wasn't just sterile dirt from under an ice sheet. This was the ghost of an entire ecosystem. Okay, so finding perfectly preserved plants under 2 miles of solid ice, it really begs the question, how in the world did they get there? And there's only one logical answer. The massive ice sheet that's there today, well, it couldn't have been there. At some point, Greenland must have been green enough for a whole tundra to grow. But the next big question is, when? When was it ice-free? To figure that out, scientists used this really clever tool involving something called cosmogenic nuclides. The easiest way to think about it is like a geological sunburn. When rock and soil are sitting out under the open sky, cosmic rays from space zap them, creating these rare isotopes like beryllium-10. So the more beryllium-10 you find, the longer that ground was exposed to the sun. It's basically an exposure clock. And when they tested the Camp Century sample, that clock gave them a jaw-dropping answer. This soil, this lost landscape, had seen the sun sometime within the last 1,000,000 years. Now, that might sound like a long time, but geologically, it's pretty recent. And it completely shattered the old idea that Greenland had been permanently frozen for millions and millions of years. It's just like researcher Dylan Rood said, Greenland really was green. The shocker was that it had been green much, much more recently than anyone ever imagined. The ice sheet wasn't permanent. It had vanished before, and then it came back. So this one discovery just blew the doors open on a totally new way of thinking about the ice sheets. It's not this static, unchanging block of ice. It's an incredibly dynamic system that has gone through huge changes, and not just in the super distant past. You see, the old idea was that glaciers are like giant belt sanders, right? They just grind everything in their path down to bare rock. But the Camp Century core showed the opposite was true. The ice had actually acted more like a protective time capsule, gently freezing and preserving that ancient tundra landscape for hundreds of thousands of years. And if you think that's wild, it gets even crazier. Other research from another spot, called Prudhoe Dome, found that a whole chunk of northern Greenland was totally ice-free as recently as 7,000 years ago. That's during the Holocene. That's our current geological period. That's the same stable climate that all of human civilization grew up in. And the action isn't just about melting and refreezing. Deep down, beneath all that ice, there is a hidden world of liquid water. Scientists have found dozens of subglacial lakes, basically pockets of water trapped between the ice and the rock, fed by heat bubbling up from the Earth's core or by meltwater draining down from the surface. It's like Greenland has a secret plumbing system. And this plumbing system is constantly working. These lakes go through this amazing cycle where they fill up with water, the pressure builds and builds until it's strong enough to actually lift the ice sheet. And then whoosh, the lake drains away, sometimes in just a few weeks. When that happens, the surface of the ice sheet above can suddenly just collapse, slumping down by hundreds of feet and leaving this massive crater. Okay, so ancient plants, hidden lakes, collapsing ice, this is all really fascinating stuff. But why does it actually matter to us right here, right now? Well, because this story isn't just about the past. This ancient history is a direct and powerful warning for our future. Let's just break down the numbers. That research at Prudhoe Dome, it showed that the area melted completely when temperatures were about 3 to 5 degrees Celsius warmer than they are today. Now, look at the projections for the year 2100. Under current trends, we are on a path to reach that exact same level of warming. The past is showing us in no uncertain terms what happens when it gets that warm. And the stakes here are just immense. If the entire Greenland ice sheet were to melt, which as past tells us is absolutely possible, it holds enough water to raise global sea levels by 23 feet. 23 feet. That is enough to completely redraw the coastlines of our planet and flood major cities around the world. And I think the lead scientist, Paul Bierman, really says it best. The secrets that were buried under Greenland's ice, they aren't just a cool story about a lost green world. They're a profound warning. The ice sheet has been there for all of human history, but these discoveries prove its survival is not a guarantee. And as that little core sample from Camp Century showed us, once it's gone, it's really, really hard to get it back.